My name is Quincy Scott, and I am now a pipa girl aboard the Joy House's yacht. The identity of the Prime Minister's legitimate daughter, once mine, was long since reduced to ashes in the great calamity 3 years past. The autumn river carried a biting cold that seeped through my thin garments. I clutched my chest, coughing violently, blood seeping through my fingers and dripping upon the pipa strings, spreading faint stains of dark red. The owner of the Joy House declared my fate wretched, saying I would not endure much longer. Yet still I yearned to live, even if only to claim a decent coffin to conceal my remains. Tonight, the Joy House's yacht was unusually lively, the entire vessel adorned with brocades and silks, the scent of powder and perfume stinging the back of my throat. The guests clinked their cups and exchanged toasts. When their eyes passed over me, they bore unabashed contempt and greed. I held my pipa, lowering my brows and averting my gaze as I plucked its strings. My voice was hoarse and fractured. No one cared what I played. They regarded me merely as a trifle to enliven the gathering. Suddenly, a commotion arose, and someone cried out loudly, "Mr. Grand Secretary has arrived." The clamor that filled the boat instantaneously subsided. All rose to pay their respects, as though even the very air had thickened to stillness. My fingertips faltered, and a discordant note rang out from the strings. Mr. Grand Secretary? That title felt like a rusted blade, suddenly plunging into the core of my heart. I stiffly lifted my head. Following the reverent gazes of those around me, at the bow stood a man clad in a dark brocade robe, his waist girded with a jade belt. His countenance remained as handsome as ever, yet his brows now bore the added gravity of high office and chilling aloofness. It is Simon Sean, my fiancé, the young gentleman who once vowed a lifetime to me beneath the apricot tree. 3 years apart, he has become the all-powerful Grand Secretary, while I have become the most despicable presence in his eyes. At his side nestled a lady in splendid attire, her beauty exquisite. Yet her gaze carried a certain scrutiny and bitterness. That is Jade Lewis, the legitimate daughter of Minister Lewis, now the wife of the Grand Secretary. I recognize her. Years ago, outside the Imperial Academy, she was once whipped by my father's guards. Simon Sean's gaze swept across the cabin before finally settling upon me. His eyes betrayed not the slightest flicker of emotion, as if beholding a perfect stranger, with even a faint, barely perceptible trace of disdain. My lord, this pipa girl plays well. Shall I bring her over? A portly, brutish merchant, drunk and unsteady, rose and reached out to seize my wrist. I instinctively flinched, but he grasped me firmly, the pressure nearly crushing my bones. Let me go. I struggled, my voice faltering with each cough. The wealthy merchant laughed loudly, his breath heavy with wine spraying across my face. Just a lowly woman, and yet you dare resist? He reached out to tear at my garments, as laughter erupted around us. At that moment, a cold, clear voice rang out. Stop. Simon Sean had come forward unnoticed, his gaze icy as it swept over the wealthy merchant. Frightened, the merchant shuddered and quickly released his grasp, smiling obsequiously. Mr. Grand Secretary, I was just joking with her. How dare you do that in my place? Simon Sean's voice was steady and unyielding, yet carried an unmistakable authority. The wealthy merchant dared not say another word and slunk back to his seat, crestfallen. I breathed a sigh of relief, instinctively glancing at Simon Sean, still nursing a forbidden flicker of hope within my heart. But the words he spoke next plunged me into an abyss of irrevocable ruin. Quincy Scott, he uttered my name with piercing scorn. Once the daughter of the Prime Minister, now fallen to become a pipa girl. What degradation! My heart sank abruptly, as if plunging into an ice cellar. It transpired that he remembered me, yet regarded me only as a wretched woman who had willingly degraded herself. You're right, Jade Lewis said with a delicate laugh as she stepped forward and linked her arm with Simon Sean's. Someone simply brought everything to herself. She appraised me from head to toe, her gaze like a blade scraping across my body. In those days, how arrogantly overbearing was Ms. Scott. Outside the Imperial Academy, merely because I glanced at Simon, you punish me by beating me. To have fallen to such a fate now is truly a righteous retribution. Jade Lewis's voice was soft, yet sufficiently clear for all present to hear distinctly. Whispers arose all around. Those gazes pricked me like needles. I drew a deep breath, stifled the metallic tang in my throat, lifted my head, and met Jade Lewis's eyes. Ms. Lewis has a remarkably good memory, my voice coldly composed. But back then, your beating was not on account of a mere glance at Mr. Sean? Jade Lewis's face changed. What nonsense are you speaking? Am I speaking nonsense? I sneered coldly. You deliberately struck my father's sedan chair that year and uttered vile language, insulting an imperial official, by law. You should have been executed. Yet I only ordered you to be beaten 20 times, which was an extraordinary act of mercy. I turned to Simon Sean, my gaze piercing. Mr. Sean, as my father's apprentice back then, how could you allow your wife to distort the facts and slander your teacher? Simon Sean's countenance instantly darkened, his eyes fixed on me with a complex and troubled gaze. Jade Lewis trembled with fury, yet not a single word escaped her lips. Without looking at them again, I held the pipa and turned to leave. Stop! Simon Sean's voice resounded behind me. I neither turned back nor faltered in my steps. I knew that between us lay an abyss of bloodied enmity. Any further words were needless. Back in the cramped, shadowed chamber of the Joy House, I could no longer endure. A mouthful of blood spilled forth, staining the cold floor crimson. The memories of 3 years past surged into my mind like a rising tide, overwhelming me. That spring, the apricot blossoms outside the Imperial Academy bloomed in full splendor. Simon Sean was still a penniless scholar, clad in a faded blue robe, standing beneath the apricot tree, his gaze clear and steadfast. Quincy, he handed me a white jade hairpin, delicately carved with tiny apricot blossoms. When I top the Imperial examinations, I shall marry you. I took the hairpin, my cheeks ablaze, my heart pounding like a drum, and nodded earnestly. At that moment, his eyes held only me, his words filled with wistful hopes for the future. I once believed that we would be like these apricot blossoms, year after year, ever companions and supports to one another. In time, Simon Sean indeed lived up to all expectations, achieving the highest honors in the imperial examinations and entering the court. My father held him in great esteem, regarding him as a trusted confidant, and devoted himself to guiding him with meticulous care. Yet, as he began to distinguish himself within the court, his political views increasingly diverged from those of my father. My father advocated for light taxation and rest for the people, whereas Simon Sean aligned himself with Minister Lewis, a proponent of harsh statutes, who was none other than Jade Lewis's father. I once endeavored to persuade him, revealing the earnest intentions behind my father's counsel, but he looked at me coldly. Quincy, the court is complicated. Everything I have done is for our future. At that time, I was still naively convinced he was merely confused for a moment. Not until that sudden calamity did I realize that the future he spoke of never included me. Minister Lewis and Simon Sean colluded to fabricate charges, falsely accusing my father of treasonous collusion. The emperor, incensed, ordered the confiscation of our household. That day, the flames rose high into the sky, mingling with the shouts of killing and cries of mourning. I witnessed with my own eyes my father being taken away by government soldiers, the shackles rubbing his wrists until they bled profusely. Mother could not bear this blow and fell gravely ill, passing away not long after. On her deathbed, she grasped my hand tightly, tears blurring her eyes. Quincy, live on no matter what. You must not give up. I was dragged away by the soldiers, relegated to inferior status, and sent to the Joy House. Once a young lady of noble birth, I was reduced overnight to the vilest of slaves. Life in the Joy House was worse than death. Each day I endured beatings, verbal abuse, and humiliation. To survive, I was compelled to learn the pipa, becoming but an instrument for others' amusement. Day after day of relentless torment has only left my body more frail. My cough grows ever more severe. At times it brings blood. The physician declared my pulmonary disease grave and my days few. I do not fear death. Rather, I am filled with bitter discontent. Discontent that my father bore such unjust suffering. Discontent that I am to perish in such a vague and dishonorable manner. My sole desire is to have a proper coffin, so that in death I may retain some measure of dignity. Yet the stipend at the Joy House is woefully scant. After purchasing medicine and sustenance, there is nothing left to save. After much hesitation, I resolve to seek out Simon Sean. I know this is humiliating, yet I am truly at my wit's end. The gates of the Grand Secretary's mansion were magnificently imposing, standing in stark contrast to the dilapidation of the Joy House. The gatekeeping guards, upon seeing me, cast scornful glances and spoke harshly. How dare a lowly wretch enter the Grand Secretary's mansion? I am here to see Simon Sean, I whispered, struggling to suppress my humiliation. Kindly inform him that Quincy Scott requests to see him. The guard laughed as though hearing a jest. Quincy Scott, the one who was fallen to a pipa girl. Who do you think you are to ask to see Mr. Grand Secretary? Just then, Jade Lewis's voice rang out from within the residence. What is all this noise about? She was adorned in splendid robes, flanked by her attendants as she stepped forth. Upon seeing me, a flicker of pride shone in her eyes. Oh, is that not Ms. Scott? Jade Lewis feigned surprise. Have you come to beg our Simon for help? I clenched my teeth, holding back my tears. Ms. Lewis, I only ask Mr. Sean to lend me 100 taels. I shall surely repay it in due course. 100 taels? Jade Lewis sneered. Ms. Scott, how dare you? You, a lowly woman, with what do you intend to repay it? She leaned close to me, lowering her voice. However, that can be arranged, but you need to publicly confess that your father is guilty of treasonous collusion, that he deserves his punishment, and then kowtow to me 3 times in apology. Then I shall grant you 100 taels. My heart felt as if it were cruelly wrung. Pain so intense I could scarcely breathe. To admit my father's guilt, that is more agonizing than death itself. Yet, when I recalled my mother's dying words, and the coffin that would allow me to preserve my dignity, I hesitated. What? Unwilling? Jade Lewis raised an eyebrow. If you are unwilling, then never mind. I do not mean to coerce you, but I am afraid you will not survive much longer. One day, you will be left exposed in the wilderness, devoured by wild dogs. Okay, I interrupted her, my voice hoarse. A triumphant smile spread across Jade Lewis's face. Very well. Then speak now. I drew a deep breath, lifted my head, and addressed the gathered crowd, articulating each word distinctly. My father, Ben Scott, is guilty of treasonous collusion and deserves his fate. Each word spoken felt as if a blade were cutting into my heart. Having finished speaking, I knelt on both knees and bowed my head heavily 3 times. My forehead struck the hard stone slab with a dull thud. Blood flowed down, blurring my vision. Very well. Jade Lewis nodded with satisfaction and bade someone hand me a heavy purse of coin. This is 100 taels. Take the money and leave at once. Do not stain the grounds of the Grand Secretary's mansion. I took up the purse, staggered to my feet, and without once looking back at Jade Lewis, turned and departed from the Grand Secretary's mansion. As I walked along the street, the eyes of passers-by pierced me like needles. Yet I felt no trace of shame, only a dull, numbing pain remained. Back at the Joy House, I carefully concealed my purse, my cough growing more severe. I know that my time is short. Several days later, Simon Sean held a banquet at his mansion and even sent for me by name from the Joy House, requesting that I play the pipa. The owner of the Joy House dared not refuse and compelled me to change into clean clothes before escorting me to the Grand Secretary's mansion. The banquet was held in the mansion's garden, brilliantly illuminated, the guests filling every corner. Simon Sean sat at the head of the table. Jade Lewis nestled at his side, her face radiant with a smile. I held the pipa in my arms, standing in the corner, my head bowed, too afraid to meet their gaze. My fingertips plucked the strings. The melody remained hoarse and fragmented. Yet no one laughed anymore, perhaps because of Simon Sean. Midway through the banquet, Jade Lewis raised a wine cup and approached me. Quincy Scott, she said with a malicious curl of her lips, I hear you just got 100 taels. You should thank me for that properly. I did not speak. I merely played the pipa in silence. Jade Lewis appeared incensed, suddenly raising her hand and overturning the wine glass she held. The wine spilled all over her. She cried out, Quincy Scott, how dare you splash me? All eyes fixed upon me, filled with astonishment and reproach. I was stunned. I had not touched her at all. It was she who had upset the wine glass herself. Simon, look at her. Jade Lewis threw herself into Simon Sean's arms, crying plaintively. She surely bears a grudge from what happened last time and has deliberately splashed me. This is utterly outrageous. Simon Sean frowned, his gaze icy as he looked at me. Quincy Scott, you are utterly ungrateful. His voice was heavy with disappointment and anger, as if I had committed some unforgivable crime. I didn't. I raised my eyes to him, tears welling up, and said, she spilled it herself. It has nothing to do with me. You still dare to deny it? Jade Lewis screamed. So many people are watching, don't you dare lie. She turned to Simon Sean. Simon, you must stand up for me. You cannot let her go so easily. Simon Sean was silent for a moment before saying, Quincy Scott, kneel before her and offer your apologies. I looked upon Simon Sean's cold face and suddenly found it utterly ridiculous. The young man who once shielded me from storms and gently comforted me now repeatedly compelled me to endure humiliation, and if I refused, my voice bore a slight tremor not of fear, but of despair. Jade Lewis immediately screamed, "How dare you, Simon? See how arrogant she is." Simon Sean's gaze hardened. "Quincy Scott, do not disgrace yourself with shamelessness." He paused, then added, "If you do not apologize, you must return the 100 taels."